There's a fantasy when you're an artist or you're creative and you get this inspired visionary idea and you're feeling that juice and you're like wanting to move with it and it's pulling you and life is just like supporting you and guiding you and all the good things are happening. And there's this fantasy that that initial spark and that initial flow is all that we need to get us to the top of the sort of proverbial mountain. There's this idea that, okay, if that inspiration was true, if that initial burst of creativity was real and legit, and there is inherent value in what I'm creating, then that will be enough to make sure that it reaches and it ripples out in the way that it's meant to. So I'm definitely observing in myself that this is my creative edge. This is my edge in the sense that I love the process of getting an idea, getting inspired, and just like rolling up my sleeves and bringing it to life. So getting the paint out and splattering it on the canvas, getting my instrument out and creating a beautiful song and letting it pour through me. But the truth is, our job as artists and our fulfillment will not really be fully realized unless our work actually makes it out into the world and touches and reaches other people. Anyone who says otherwise is lying. Like, for sure, there's something about, it's just I do it for myself, and there's an inherent fulfilling element of that. But there is an aspect of what we as artists and creatives and creators require to be sustained and going further that comes from other people connecting with what we're doing. We're not just creating on a desert island or in a vacuum. And so when it comes to that point in the process, a lot of us get off the ride because we have this fantasy and this false expectation that if what I created is good and valuable, it's just gonna soar. It's just gonna fly off the shelves, so to speak. And we don't put the same intention and energy and joy of creating into that part of the process, which is what I would call stewarding the creation. And in a way, I'm seeing for myself that that's typically where I get off the ride. If my song or my video or my creation doesn't soar right out the gate with maybe like one drop on social media or one newsletter or whatever, there's a part of me that just decides, oh, it's not gonna happen. And I give up. And this is what we do. And in this way, when we do this, we're actually letting our creation down. It's our job as creatives, as creators, as instruments of the source energy and inspiration that wants to come through us and that comes through into our work, to continue to steward and show up for the sharing of that creation with the same love, the same inspiration, the same joy that we show up for the creative process. It's part of the process. And when we don't do that, that's where the stagnation happens. And oftentimes it's just because of doubt. It's just because of doubt or fear or worry. And so for some of us, that doubt and fear and worry shows up at the beginning. And some of us are able to get past that first wave, but how many waves of doubt does it actually take to overcome to reach the point where our creation reaches its full potential? So that's what the invitation of this video is like, what is your edge? Where do you usually get off the ride? And what would it take for you to continue going forward and sustain your effort and sustain your ability to be inspired and joyfully show up for your creation, for your offering, for your work at that step in the process and see what happens? It's like catching a second wind and then a third wind and a fourth wind. And I'm seeing in myself that there's a tendency, there's an edge. There's a point at which I typically get off the ride and I abandon that particular creation. And of course, I get back up and I get back on the horse and I start again. But there's a limit, there's an upper limit and a ceiling on where each creation has the potential to go and how far it can ripple and how far it can reach, which is not being served by my fantasy that it's just enough to create it and make a little splash of noise in the world and expect that it's just gonna ripple out. and reach all the people that it's meant to. And so I invite you to consider that part of the creative process, the sharing part, the stewarding the creation, is just as important, just as valuable, and just as potentially enjoyable as the moment of inception and the moment of creation. That's it. Steward your creation. Don't give up. You got this.